Hi, welcome to the Climate Action Assembly. Thank you to everybody for coming. We're Team Marine, an environmental organization here at SAMO that focuses on climate change, plastic pollution, and ocean acidification. So why are you here today? Why September 20th? Why Friday? Why today? So today is the date of the International Youth Climate Strike. How many of you have friends who are striking in downtown right now? Raise your hand if you have friends in downtown. Okay. That's awesome. So the climate strike movement was spearheaded by climate activist Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old Swedish girl. We have a video of her to introduce you guys to her.
I don't want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to the scientists.
It all started August 20th, 2018. Greta Thunberg, then 15 years old, skipped class to protest in front of the Swedish parliament to raise awareness about climate change. Since then, she's continued to strike on Fridays, she's delivered blunt speeches on the world stage, and she's ignited a global youth-led movement to fight climate change.
We have come here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not.
On March 15th, 2019, an estimated 1.4 million young people in 123 countries joined Greta in her Friday protests. Now, every Friday around the world, students are skipping school to demand political action on climate change.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now!
Oh, and after turning 16 this year, she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
So obviously this isn't a climate strike, but what we're here to do today is to share with you the urgency of the climate crisis, why it matters, what's causing it, the solutions that the government needs to move towards in order to curtail the worst effects of climate change, and your role in securing the fight for a livable planet. Here we have a video to introduce you to the crisis.
Climate change, as we know it today, is change in our Earth's overall temperature with massive and permanent ramifications. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have come a long way. Humans built airplanes, faster cars, developed remarkable technology, and learned how the natural resources around us can be used for our benefit.
Human activity currently generates an excess of carbon emissions, which are released into the atmosphere, causing higher temperatures, which melt ice sheets and glaciers, contributing to rising sea levels and floods. Right now, the planet is already 1 degree Celsius warmer than it was 120 years ago. Scientists warn that we need to prevent the temperature from rising more than 0.5 degree, and we need to act now, or we will live to see the pollution of oceans and air, shortages of food and fresh water, the extinction of many species, the disappearance of low-lying cities and islands, mass migrations and social unrest. Millions of casualties due to floods, storms, heat waves, droughts, and disease. Our children will grow up in this devastated world. What will we say when they ask? The science and data were all there for everyone to see. Why didn't you stop this while you still could?
As you saw, humans have done something unimaginable. We have changed the Earth's climate. We share this planet with millions of other species, and yet we act like we're the only ones that need it and the only ones that live here. So some people ask, doesn't the Earth's climate always fluctuate? Yeah, the Earth's climate fluctuates. But as you can see, this is a graph of the carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere over the last 1,000,000 years. That last part is the last 50 years that humans have been releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We have skyrocketed the levels beyond anything the planet has ever known. This is not normal climate fluctuation. This is a climate crisis. So we're constantly bombarded with news stories about floods, hurricanes, natural disasters, fires, and at some point, they kind of all just blur into words. We lose the message that climate change is the greatest existential threat to humans and to every single living thing on the planet, and that it requires urgent action.
So take this in for a second. Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. On the plus side, what this means is that we only have to change 100 companies, and then that's fixed. We have addressed 71% of global emissions. On the other hand, what it means is that in a world of 7.5 billion individuals, we have allowed 100 giant entities to be responsible for the majority of the climate crisis that we know today. This graph is, this chart, it is showing you by volume, this is from the EPA, what our global emissions are attributed to. We have industry at 22%. That's something that we have to band together and address through our government because that is giant companies. You have electricity. This is going to be transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy. But then you have transportation and agriculture, which I want to touch on for a second. This graph is talking about volume, not by potency. So while some industries might give off a lot of carbon emissions, CO2, agriculture gives off a lot of methane, and transportation in particular, nitrous oxide. Methane, that comes out of cows. You guys may have heard of that. It seems to be something that a lot of people kind of latch onto. It's essentially, they produce it, and through that, we can greatly reduce the amount of carbon emissions that we put out through our own habits. Through reducing, for example, the meat we eat, the animal agriculture industry, if we reduce our contact with it, not completely get rid of it, but just reduce it. That is going to address that issue. And with transportation, I just want to bring up real quick, how many of you guys have ever used one-day shipping on Amazon? Because it's a thing that we use a lot. And while it has its benefits, especially when you're trying to order something and get it the next day, it tends to push this industry. It gives them an incentive to be inefficient and to use more energy than needed. For example, what they do a lot in the industry is they will fill trucks up halfway and send them out, as opposed to filling them the full way. It's energy inefficient. So stuff like this, where it comes to waiting a few more days, can be a huge driver of reducing our carbon emissions. One thing that our planet has as a mechanism for dealing with an uptick in CO2 emissions is something we call a carbon sink. Carbon sink can be anything from an ocean, a forest, any natural environment that is particularly apt at absorbing carbon from the atmosphere. One that you guys may have heard of is the Amazon rainforest. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it being the lungs of our earth, and I'm hoping a lot of you guys got a little bit alarmed when you guys saw a week ago that they were on fire and it was this huge issue. But I will say one thing, while I'd argue that the lungs of the earth do not come in the tall, lush green variety, but rather they're going to be the vast, deep blue. It is actually our oceans that produce 70% of the oxygen that we breathe. They're a huge carbon sink that no one really knows, and since they're not visibly on fire, we don't really pay attention to it. Essentially what happens is our ocean takes in CO2, it decreases the pH level of the water, and it rises in acidity. What this means is that it makes it hard for certain marine life to develop, and what we don't realize is that that marine life, when it comes to phytoplankton and marine plants, those are the ones that are driving our oxygen in our atmosphere. They're the ones that are our life support. And we're losing reefs due to coral bleaching because of this acidification. And through this whole process, we are poisoning the lungs of our earth. We are poisoning our life support.
Hi. So, as you guys have seen, global warming and climate change affects our environment, but it also affects us socially. By causing environmental racism and injustice, by targeting those with less. So, for example, it is unhealthy to live near oil extraction sites. It causes people to get headaches, to get dizziness, to get respiratory issues, to get endocrine disorders. But because these areas are more affordable, those people who are economically disadvantaged don't have an alternative but to move here and be exposed to these things. And they grow up here, they live here, they work here, and they have to face all of these things. So, all of this might, thank you. So all of this might sound kind of depressing, but luckily, the good news is that we have an international community that was brought together by the UN and the United Nations, and they released the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And pretty much, our scientific community is telling us the most important thing summarized in the report is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius permanently. So right now, we will have to limit our global temperature increase to 1.5, and right now we're increasing it by 1 degree Celsius. So it's something that we have to do and act quickly, because if not, the results are going to be devastating. And this is going to require changes. Thank you. And this is going to require changes in all sectors. So as they mentioned, in transportation, in energy, in the industry, in agriculture, in commercial and residential areas, in the commercial and residential sector. So, and also our CO2 emissions would need to fall by about almost 50% of what they were 10 years ago. And eventually by 2050, we would need to reach net zero. And if you guys are not familiar with the term net zero, by 2050, this pretty much means that the same amount of carbon dioxide that we're emitting into the atmosphere must also be removed. And that is what our scientific community is telling us, and it is something that us and our policy makers should do and follow. So what is it gonna take for us to get out of this mess? So here comes the fun solutions, and yeah.
Okay guys, hi. That was kind of rough. It's really alarming to see what's going on and to feel powerless and to feel like all this is going on and you have no way to fix it. But good news, guys, there are solutions available to us right now. So basically what we're gonna have to do is go from emitting a high level of greenhouse gases to reach net zero, as Isa was talking about just a second ago, but we're actually eventually going to have to reach negative emissions, which means that we're pulling more carbon out of the atmosphere than we're putting in. And we have technologies being developed, but actually a natural climate solution is reforestation and regenerating forests that we have lost so they can pull carbon out of the atmosphere. So don't get fooled though. We can't just take carbon out of the atmosphere and keep on going the way that we are. The solution to climate change lies with our change, with change in our systems, our policies, and our culture. So first of all, we're going to have to restructure the way that we farm, the way that we have livestock and that we produce food, because as it is right now, it emits a lot of greenhouse gas and it is unsustainable. We're also going to have to radically expand our public transportation options, because everyone using their own individual cars, it's obviously very destructive to our climate. But if we invest and we provide solutions for public transportation, that will no longer be an issue. And most importantly, we're going to have to get off of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the reason that we're here today. They're the reason that we are facing a climate crisis. And right now, we have renewable energy resources, and what we're going to have to do is switch from fossil fuels to renewables. And very importantly, there is a large responsibility with our government to take action. And a lot of people get confused. What is my government going to do? Why do I want them involved in my life? Well, the government actually has the power for the fastest and most effective change possible, because they can set targets, regulate emissions produced by companies, require sustainable industry practices, and ensure a just transition. Because at the end of the day, the people who work in the fossil fuel industry to feed their families, They are not our enemy. Carbon emissions are our enemy. So the government has a huge part in making sure those families can transition into a green economy. And you guys, California State Senator Ben Allen has made a special video just for us in this room here today, and we're so excited to show that to you.
Hey everybody, State Senator Ben Allen here. I'm a proud Sam Ohio alum and a big fan of Senora Bautistas. I just wanted to take a moment to applaud each and every one of you today who's out there taking a stand for our planet and demanding that lawmakers step up and commit to making real and effective policy changes to reverse global warming. Climate change is the #1 threat to our planet's health, our nation's long-term growth, and our collective future. And we can no longer sit idly by while organized moneyed interests overexploit our resources and threaten the ecological and long-term economic health of our planet. I'm proud to have played a leadership role in critical legislation in the state legislature focused on greenhouse gas emission reduction, clean energy, plastic waste reduction, environmental education, conservation, open space preservation, and much more. But those of us legislators who are committed environmentalists can't do it alone. We need all of our elected leaders to be better stewards of the environment if we really are going to be able to make a difference on the macro level here in California. And that's where all of you come in. Continue demanding the attention of the legislature and other elected leaders. Volunteer with local environmental groups. Write letters, make calls, educate your friends and family. Use social media to spread the word. Being environmentally conscious means you have a conscience that speaks to you. When you hear news stories about the increase in Category 5 hurricanes, the largest fires in state history, sea level rise, and drought impacting folks all over the world, particularly those in impoverished communities. It means that you believe that you have the right to a cleaner planet and a brighter future. So please, keep doing what you're doing because your voice matters. And as a future voter, you have the power to ensure that your government has its priorities in the right places. Thanks so much for your advocacy, and thank you for your commitment.
So as you saw, government has a huge part in this. And yes, federally, the government has a huge role. But it's also important to ask, what is our local government doing? So we're very excited to welcome to the stage. Please give a warm welcome to the Santa Monica Mayor, Gleam Davis.
Thanks so much. So I want to thank you all because by being here today, you're already making a difference. And I should apologize and really tell you how grateful I am that you're tolerating me being here because it's my generation and the generations that went before that have put us in this crisis that we find ourselves in. But that's okay because you all are here to be part of the solution. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be the mayor of a community that believes in finding solutions to the climate crisis at a local level. Every single person in our community can do something. We can all be part of the change we want to see. So I'm here to stand in solidarity with each and every one of you, with Sam Ohio Team Marine, and with all the youth in our community, some of whom apparently are out in front of City Hall right now, to tell you that your local government hears you and we want to work with you to be part of the solution. We've reinforced our commitment to preserve our planet through policies, allocations of resources. We've set budgetary priorities, one of which is reversing the effects of climate change and preserving our planet. But as a beach town, you all know we're very vulnerable to this climate change crisis. If we don't turn things around by the end of this century, there's not going to be any beach left in our beach town. Rising sea levels will basically take away Santa Monica's identity, and none of us can afford to let that happen. We've seen hotter summers. We've seen our neighbors in Malibu affected by wildfires. So we all know that climate change is real, and we all know that it's knocking on the door and that each and every one of us are going to be affected by it. But your city long ago recognized that we needed to do something about this. Back in 1994, before any of you were born, I unfortunately was born, we adopted a sustainable city plan. We were one of the first communities in the entire United States to recognize that we needed to take care of the environment, to be stewards of the ocean that is our neighbor, to be stewards of the environment. And so we began on a long journey of being one of the most progressive cities in the entire world with regard to the environment, and especially with regard to nullifying the effects of climate change and preventing any future damage to our climate. So recently, one of the things we've done is adopted a climate action and adaptation plan. One of the key goals of that, and you saw some information about that in the prior presentation, is we are going to reduce our carbon emissions in Santa Monica by 80% by 2030, and we're going to reach citywide carbon neutrality by 2050, if not sooner. And you all can be part of that. So let me share with you some very specifics. I hope they don't bore you too much about what we're doing. We are aiming for all Santa Monicans to use 100% renewable energy by 2030. One of the ways we did this is we entered into what's called a climate choice aggregation system, what we call the Clean Power Alliance. And what that means is that everyone who lives in Santa Monica, every business in Santa Monica, the school district in Santa Monica now has the option of getting 100% of their energy from renewable non-nuclear sources. None of you had to do anything to take advantage of that. So right now, if you live in Santa Monica, when you turn on the lights, that energy is coming from renewable non-nuclear resources. We also were first in the state to adopt an electric vehicle action plan. We already have in our 8.3 square miles over 90 electric vehicle charging ports, and we're going to have over 300 electrical vehicle charging ports in the near future. We have over 130 electrical vehicles in our city fleet, and we just recently took ownership of our very first all-electric battery-operated Big Blue bus, and we have committed to totally electrifying the entire bus fleet within the next 20 years. But you saw up here that transportation is one of the biggest challenges we face. And we all know how easy it is to hop in the car and get around. We need to change our habits. By 2030, Santa Monica set a target that between 14 and 35% of all the trips taken in our community will be by bicycle. We've begun this work by having 19 new miles of fresh Kermit green bike lanes for you all to enjoy safely. And we also have created, if you've seen them, signalized intersections with bike indicators. So when you're on your bike, you can tell the signal you're there so you can keep going on. We also hope that by 2030, 25% of our trips will be by walking. It's the easiest way to get around, and it doesn't cost a thing. And one of the things we've done is we've started using what are called leading pedestrian intervals. And I don't know if you've seen them, but when you go to some of our intersections downtown, what you'll notice is that you get the walk sign before the cars going your direction get the green sign, meaning that you have the opportunity to enter the intersection more safely. So not only are we encouraging walking by making it safer, we're also becoming a Vision Zero city, which means we want no deaths from bicycle accidents or from pedestrian accidents. And I know that if you're here, you know that we have both the Expo line and the Big Blue bus system, which are wonderful ways to get around. Pretty soon we're going to begin work on a major change in 17th Street between the Expo line and Santa Monica College that's going to improve biking and walking connections for people who are making that journey. But frankly, the first thing we need to do is change the way we think about mobility. Right now, we think of biking, walking, transit as alternative means of mobility, alternatives to the car. What we need to do is think of biking, walking, using transit as our primary modes of transportation, and that we only use automobiles when we need to, and they become the alternative mode of transportation. So we got to change that paradigm. We also have adopted a zero waste plan, and we're shooting for having zero waste out of this community. And by waste, we mean waste going into landfills by 2030. Recycling certainly helps, but as you probably know if you're here, that the recycling industry around the world has changed quite a bit. And while we used to be able to send a lot of recyclable materials to places in Asia, they're no longer accepting our recyclable materials. So what that means is we just need to generate less waste, less use of single-use plastics, reuse and recycle what you do have. If you bring your lunch, bring it in a reusable container. Santa Monica was one of the first cities to institute a citywide single-use plastic bag ban. And I think a lot of people in this room were there for it, and I really want to thank you for that because we're proud of that and we're proud of your participation there. But we didn't stop there. We recently adopted the most progressive takeout container law in the United States. Not only have we banned plastic straws, but we now require that every takeout container that is given to you when you get food in the city of Santa Monica be marine biodegradable. So we are not putting any more plastics into the ocean. As some of you may know, that Santa Monica is lucky in that we do not rely on the larger metropolitan water district to get our water. Santa Monica actually owns its own water supply by wells that are here under the city of Santa Monica and actually throughout West Los Angeles. And that gives us a real opportunity in terms of water use. So one of the things we're trying to do is get to water self-sufficiency by 2023, meaning we won't have to import any more water from the Owens Valley or Northern California. But that's going to mean that we all need to be careful about our water use. Santa Monica has already done a great job in terms of water conservation. But what that means is encouraging more people to convert from lawns to drought-tolerant plants, to not hosing down our sidewalks, to making sure that when we use water, we're using it carefully. But we also need to recycle the water we already have. I once heard a wonderful woman from India say, it's not a question of whether or not we have enough water, it's what we do with the water after we use it. And so we are building what's called a SWIP. It's going to be underneath the Civic Center parking lot, which is going to be basically a large cistern and treatment plant. So wastewater that's coming off our streets and coming out of our buildings can be treated and then recycled through our city for uses such as landscaping and in toilets. We're also building what is called a living building in our City Hall annex. That building, not only in the way it is constructed, but in the way it will operate, will have zero net effect on the planet. In fact, it's not even going to use water in the toilets. It's going to be composting toilets. So when it's open, I encourage you all to come over and give them a try. It's going to be among the most beautiful buildings in the world, and it's the first municipally built living building in the United States. So I've bored you with a lot of statistics, but I hope it reinforces the idea that we're with you in this fight. We know that we have left you a world that needs a lot of work, and we want to make it more livable for you. But the question is, what can you do? And the most important thing each and every one of you can do is vote. When you get to be voting age, vote for politicians who care about the environment. The other thing you can do is stay informed. Come to rallies like this. Make sure that you know what's going on so you can influence decision makers. Be an advocate. Team Marine is a perfect way to do that, but there's lots of ways to get involved. And finally, you can take action. Take one less car trip a week. Get on the big blue bus, bike. Encourage your parents to carpool when they come to school events. Each and every one of those small actions makes a big difference in this large world and this challenge that we're facing. So thank you for having me, and I really want to encourage you to keep the work going. Thanks.
let's give it up for Gleam Davis. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Okay, you guys. So we heard about what the local government is doing, and Santa Monica is doing an amazing job. But on a smaller level, what are we doing at our school? So that's why, that question is why we've invited SMMUSD Sustainability Coordinator Caroline Coster here. So now she is going to tell you what Samo High is doing to make change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis, for leading the way with the city so SMMUSD can follow suit. I'm so excited to be here and seeing all these faces that are eager to make a difference within our community, our school, and on a global level. I'm first going to talk about SMMUSD's role in the fight for the global climate crisis. SMMUSD is taking a stance. Last March 21st, the district passed its first comprehensive plan for district-wide sustainability. So what that is, it's an actionable plan that leads the way of every step that needs to be taken to reach goals so SMMUSD can reduce its impact on the natural environment and meet the goals of the city and nationally to be more sustainable. And most importantly, those goals are all about education. So I just want to tell you, as my role here as a sustainability coordinator, everything that I do has your futures in the front of what I do. Everything is about what you guys need to learn, the tools that you need to be successful and to be better environmental stewards. So just some tools that you can use. I first wanted to tell you that the district switched to 100% renewable energy with the CPA last May. So 100% of our energy is from renewable sources as of right now. Samo High, compared to last year, saved 11.8% of energy through both behavior measures, so looking more at how we use energy within our buildings, in our classrooms, as well as changing out all of the lights to LED lights. On a district level, we've saved 7.9%, and that's about, to give you perspective, that's about $71,000 of energy savings. Samo High's was about $45,000, so Samo High is a huge part of the sustainability within our district. And second thing I wanted to focus on was Greta Thunberg to Congress said, I don't want you to be hopeful, I want you to be worried. And a unique position that I am, I've been doing sustainability in K through 12 schools for 6 years now. Something has come out, it's called climate anxiety or eco-anxiety. Meaning you guys are feeling the weight of needing to change the world on your shoulders. And sometimes that weight is so overwhelming and so powerful that it tends to be hard for individuals to see how important they are. Instead of being fueled and energized and knowing how to join the fight and make a difference, they feel as though that they don't make a difference. And I'm here to assure you that you do. You definitely do. And so what I want to task you guys with is to make sure that the district follows the sustainability plan. I encourage you to download it on the district website, encourage your teachers to talk about it, and make sure it doesn't fall to the side. Make sure that in every conversation, every building that we build, that sustainability plan is front and center to make sure that we're building efficiently, to make sure all the new groups and the classes bring sustainability into the classroom. And also, I want you guys to go home, don't wait. We don't have time to wait. It's no longer time to wait. There's no excuses anymore. We have to take a stance. But sit down and figure out what you can change in your life. The simple things, just make a list. What can you buy differently? What can you support? What can you change? What can you get rid of that you really don't need? And start making those simple changes and then communicate those changes to your friends. Do social media to show your journey to change. Communicate this in a broader level, join groups, and make sure that you keep going. Because this is how we all make a difference, especially within your classroom. I rely on you guys to be the eyes and ears of what we can change. And so it's really important that you start now. So thank you very much.
All right, well, I'd like to take a second and thank all of our speakers on behalf of Team Rain. Thank you so much for coming out and educating us. Thank you, guys. Now, you've heard about the problem, and I know it might feel a little overwhelming hearing about this crisis. And we've been mostly talking about like large-scale systematic solutions that's mostly government-based. So you might be thinking, like, what does this got to do with me? That's a good question, because this is exactly what we're going to talk about right now. All right. So, guys, this is the problem. We have a lot of people saying this, like, I'm just one person. What good can I do? What damage can I do? I just want you to think about that. What if, like, Greta Thunberg had thought the same thing? She's the very reason that millions of students are striking today. So that's just not true, okay? Because you are the solution. Now, the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. I know you've probably heard about it a bunch of times, but did you actually know that there is a hierarchy in which we should be doing them? It's exactly in that order: reduce, then reuse, and then recycle. And I want you guys to look at the graph over there. The stuff you buy is actually worth 26% of the average American's carbon footprint. The reason behind that is the stuff that you casually go buy from the market, it takes a long journey to get to your hands, from the raw materials to manufacturing to transportation to every step that gets that product on that shelf in the market. That emits a whole lot of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. And I want you guys to know that you can vote with your dollar. When you buy a product, you're basically saying that I support this product's manufacturer. So why don't we use that logic to our advantage? Why don't we start buying more and more sustainable products? Because that's saying, okay, I support the companies who are doing this the right way. And this growing demand for sustainable products will create this incentive for companies to actually start creating more of these products and selling them on the market.
Essentially, the solution is reduce. It's one word, simple solution. It's just use less and produce less. What this can mean is, on the levels of transportation, be more energy efficient. When it comes to what you're eating, sustainably grown food, when it comes to eating less meat, we get that it's a lot. We just eat way too much. Just reducing that, as well as composting, can reduce the methane that food produces when it's sent to landfills. Another thing is energy. We realize not everyone can afford to deal with solar panels. However, what everyone can do is make sure that they're reducing and being as efficient as they can with their electricity use. And this is something that's across the board in all households.
So the average American consumes 220 pounds of plastic per year. Now, look at how many people there are in this room. As a community in Barnum Hall, we produce so much plastic just yearly. Now, in this plastic water bottle, it's equivalent to filling it 1/4 of the way with oil. This is because plastics are made from fossil fuels, which are extracted from the ground and burned and turned into carbon emissions, and we need to learn how to change this. So there are so many alternatives that you can use instead of plastics. So try to find one thing that you normally use in your daily life and think about changing it. For example, changing from a plastic water bottle to a metal one. It can actually be more cost effective.
We as the individual, as the solution, must fight against climate change. We must stay informed by watching the news by reputable sources such as NPR, BBC, and other news sources. By staying informed, we can't fight against something we don't know anything about. So by watching the news and staying informed, we can fight against the issue. We must demand change. By being conscious of local environmental measures, we can then influence local governors, mayors, and congressmen to make changes, systematic, sustainable changes by striking and/or email. We are the reason a proposition comes to fruition. Remember, who's gonna be voting in 2020? Woo! All right, who's gonna be voting for the planet in 2020? Woo! All right, all you adolescents, all my fellow adolescents, don't feel left out, because today we can go to the Climate Action Fair in the Centennial Quad and take action. We can be voting. We can be making change. We can be voting for more sustainable systemic change. Vote eco always. All right, taking action. You can take action by advising your close friends, your family on alternatives, sustainable alternatives in their daily routine. Not only we can get involved, we can join and participate in eco-oriented organizations, and best of all, we can lead by example. We should be the ones leading by example. We should be the ones being sustainable for our friends to see. The Climate Action Fair is right at lunch. Sorry for taking so long, guys. We want you to go and be in the fight for a future and livable planet. Woo!
That was perfect. Okay, with the circumstances, that was perfect. It was totally fine. You did.
I was so sorry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madrano, Dr. Shelton, all of the admin, Mr. K, Ms. Bautista, Ben Allen, Caroline Coster, and Gleam Davis, and all of you for joining, and all the teachers who brought their classes, and all the teachers that let you guys come. Thank you so much.